When you first log in to Docassemble, the first thing you'll go to is what's called the Docassemble Playground. You can think of the playground as the development environment for Docassemble interviews. In the main part of the screen, you have what looks like a text editor, and it will preload a default interview for you so that you can take a look at some of the structures that Docassemble offers. Up here at the top, you can specify a name for your interview. You can also search your interview in this text editor. Down here at the bottom, you have buttons to save the interview, save and run the interview, download, and delete the interview entirely. Over here on the left, you have this menu of variables that are used either by the entire Docassemble system or by your interview. And then up here at the top, you have different menu options that you can choose from. We'll go over all of these one by one so that you have a good understanding about what the playground is, what it does, and the best ways to use it. First, the text editor. The Docassemble Playground text editor, or editor, however you want to call it, is essentially just a text editor with numbered lines. You'll see in this test interview that we have an entire interview and it composes 48 lines. To begin editing your interview, you just need to click in this text editor and begin typing. You can see that Docassemble colors text based on what it thinks it is. So when I typed in "here is some text," it was just black. Docassemble doesn't really know what I'm doing here. But if you look down here in this question block, this 4 or 5 lines of text separated by the 3 horizontal lines, you can see that Docassemble has colored the question, or the word question, blue. This text, "what is your name," red, and then the field specifier blue as well. First name is blue, and then client.name.first is also black. Docassemble is able to recognize what you're doing inside this text editor as long as you follow what Docassemble needs for formatting. When you type in questions, you need to just type in the word question, the colon, a space, and then the vertical line, and then when you hit enter, tab over to begin typing the question. If you take "what is your name" and put it directly under question, the color red goes away and Docassemble doesn't really know what you mean. So by indenting it with a tab or 2 spaces, you tell Docassemble, "Hey, this text is under the question. It's the question text that I want you to display." Otherwise, Docassemble thinks that it's some sort of variable or code to run and doesn't know what to do with it. If you want to search in the playground, all you have to do is use the search field, and Docassemble will highlight where that word appears in your interview. To save your interview, just use the Save button. You can see that when I saved, it generated an error over here in this column because I left the text "here is some text" up at the top. If I get rid of that and hit Save, the error message will go away. If Docassemble detects an error in the structure of the interview or in something that's wrong with the interview, it will show an error here in this column on the right-hand side. As I mentioned before, this column also shows all of the variables used by Docassemble in the interview that you're creating. To give you an example, I'm going to create a new variable under this question, "what is your name?" I'll create a new field and I'll call it nickname. Once I save the interview, you'll see that nickname has shown up here in this column. You'll also notice that nickname is yellow or orange as opposed to the other variables that are some shade of blue. This is because Docassemble noticed that I'm using a variable but don't use it anywhere else. So this variable collects information, but I don't do anything with that information later on in the interview. You can see that the variable benefits is colored blue, and that's because benefits is actually displayed to the end user down here on line 37. when it creates the final document saying you are eligible for and inserts whatever value the variable benefits has. So Docassemble color codes the variables in this variable column to tell you whether or not it's actually being used as a variable. And if I hover over it, I get a tooltip that says possibly not used. Another handy feature on Docassemble is if I want to insert the variable nickname somewhere, I just need to click that variable over here in the variable column. It will insert wherever my cursor is. So if I wanted to put at the end of the interview on the information sheet, your nickname is, leave my cursor inside the curly brackets with the $sign, which means that Docassemble will insert that variable there, and I just go and click on nickname, and it will insert it there. If I save the interview, nickname has changed colors. So now nickname is a used variable, and Docassemble is happy. The button Save and Run the interview not only saves the interview, but also runs a test version of that interview in a new tab. So if I click Save and Run, you'll see that now it's running the interview for me. If I go back to the playground, it will give me a message that says running another tab. If I click Download the interview, I'll download the interview as a YAML file. That's that file extension YML. One thing to keep in mind, Docassemble requires that you use YAML files for all interview questions. If I scroll down in the playground, you'll notice down here that Docassemble has documentation embedded in the playground. On the left, I have a column of example blocks, and if I click one of those examples, that example loads here in the middle column and then gives me a preview as well of what is actually going on. If I want to insert one of these examples into my interview, I just need to put my cursor wherever I want it to be inserted and then click the green Insert button, and you'll see that it's inserted into my interview. In the example blocks, Docassemble takes you through the different kinds of objects, formatting options, Mako templating, PDF and Word docs. All kinds of examples exist in this example block section. It's a very, very handy and complete set of documentation tools that you can use when creating interviews. You'll notice here under the preview section that I can click on this preview as a link, and I get the tooltip, click to try this interview. If I click on it, it loads that example for me because all of the examples are running on my Docassemble server as part of the standard installation. Back inside the playground, I can also share my interview by clicking the share link, and that gives me the live running test interview that I can then click the URL for and share that with other people for them to try it out. It's important to note that interviews that are running in the playground and not as Docassemble packages are not production ready and should not be shared with actual people who need to complete the interview. Only use the share feature from the playground or the save and run feature for internal testing or testing with other developers. If you want to make an interview usable by a client or by a person who's not a developer, make sure you create a package and do that way. Up here at the top, I can also cycle through all of the YAML files that I've saved to my playground. You can see if I click on that, I have a good number right now of YAML files that I can choose from. And to pick a different one, I just need to click on it and it'll take me to that YAML file. I can then save and run it from there. You'll see that you also have the option to upload YAML files by clicking on the upload button if you've created them on your local machine. If I want to add a new YAML file, all I have to do is click on this plus sign with the add button, and that will create a new blank file for me that I then have to name and then put in text. Over here in the right-hand column, Docassemble also gives me hints about what's going on with my interview, whether or not there's an error, and how I can resolve that. You'll see that now that I've added a blank interview, Docassemble is giving me a warning. This interview file does not have an endpoint. So Docassemble is telling me, hey, You don't have an endpoint for this interview. You need to have a mandatory code block so that the Docassemble interview has something to do. And it gives me a link to what mandatory code blocks are. I can populate my new interview by just inserting some question blocks from the example blocks down below. I'll need to name my file. I'll name it test2. And then I'll hit save. You'll see that that warning has gone away now that I have a mandatory code block, and I can now save and run my interview. Honestly, the playground is an incredible feature that Docassemble comes with standard. It's a great way to develop interviews. It makes it very easy to know what you're doing, to give you examples, and to guide you in the interview creation process. If you're ready to start creating interviews or saving those interviews as packages and making them public, check out my other videos that give you walkthroughs of how to do just that.